Recently, Donald and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who likes now to style himself Secretary of War, staged a disturbing spectacle in Quantico, Virginia, using our military brass, admirals and generals, and other leaders as pawns. They summoned more than 800 officers from around the world and subjected them to an inappropriate, partisan, deeply disturbing speech. Since then, members of our armed forces have been speaking out against the Trump regime's improper use of the military and that occasion. First, here's NBC's Today with a recap of those events.
President Trump and Hegseth delivering politically charged speeches at an unprecedented gathering of the military's top brass, where the president escalated his crime crackdown, arguing it's the military's job to fight against what he called a war from within.
We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
In keeping with the military's nonpartisan tradition, the admirals and generals largely avoided reacting to the president.
And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
Hegseth, an Iraq War veteran, argued without evidence that diversity initiatives have degraded America's military might.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. The era of politically correct, overly sensitive, don't hurt anyone's feelings leadership ends right now.
Cool, Hegseth. Then fuck your feelings, because we know that your feelings were really badly hurt when those men and women in that room who you are not fit to be in a room with didn't give you the applause you thought you deserved, you tiny, tiny man. Yes, Pete Hegseth knows better than top military brass what works and does not work in the military. That unqualified, corrupted person actually lectured them about what it means to be a soldier, what it means to be a man, when he is, again, not fit to shine their shoes. Before we go on, we have to continue to keep this issue front and center. We need to make sure that the American people understand how Donald and the Trump regime are misusing our military. So please like and share this video. And if you believe in our mission at Marry Trump Media, please subscribe to our channel. Current military members cannot speak publicly on policy decisions, but retired officers, on the other hand, are free to voice their opinions. And in the wake of that bizarre, grotesque, and insulting display put on by Donald and Hegseth, they are speaking out. Leon Panetta, a veteran and former defense secretary and CIA director, had the following to say.
We have the strongest military on the face of the earth. We've got the best fighting men and women on the face of the earth. And the purpose of that is to defend us and protect our national security. It's not to deploy these people to the cities in this country. And it's not to certainly have them train in the cities of this country. They need training, and they get training on how to conduct wars, how to deal with drones, how to deal with technology, how to deal with some of the weapon systems that we're seeing today. That's what they need to be trained on, not trained on the streets of America. That is just undermining the real purpose of having a military.
And then retired General Barry McCaffrey weighed in on MSNBC about the debacle.
That presentation at Quantico from the President and the Secretary of Defense is one of the most bizarre, unsettling events I've ever encountered. The President sounded incoherent, exhausted, rabidly partisan, at times stupid, meandering, couldn't hold the thought together. That audience is an apolitical institution. They will be respectful and follow all legal orders willingly. And by the way, it's not just the generals, it was the senior enlisted advisors for all those commands. They hold the culture of the armed forces in their hands. And then the Secretary of Defense gave a Rambo presentation, at times pretty good, whiskers, shaving, physical fitness, a first sergeant's talk at Reveille, not bad. But at other times, he's basically calling into question whether minorities and women were DEI or were they promotions based on merit. Nothing could be farther from the truth. By the way, the group he was talking to have been in combat for 20 years. Their sons and daughters served. A bunch of them got killed and maimed. It was a highly inappropriate use of the armed forces, never mind the unsettling things about using military force in American cities.
With all due respect to retired General McCaffrey, just a quick thing about being clean shaven. There are men who require an exemption from shaving, not because they want to have facial hair, but because they have a skin condition that's exacerbated by shaving. That's all. And guess what? Most of the people requiring that exemption are black men. So it's also racist. Then retired Brigadier General Steve Anderson gave insight into how our nation's enemies may be reacting to what we just saw this week. Take a look.
Unfortunately, they're probably laughing. I mean, our enemies are taking great solace in what's going on right now, China and Russia, and they know that America is weakening. Our world status is weakening every day that Donald Trump remains in power. That's all there is to it, really. You know, Russia is growing stronger. You got people like Netanyahu that essentially heretofore would have asked permission to do the things that he did. And now he just tells them afterwards, because he knows that Donald Trump isn't going to do anything. And then Donald Trump invites, Putin over to Alaska, rolls out the red carpet, and then, continues to bomb the Ukrainians as ever before. So, I mean, it's really sad to see that the United States is going downhill so fast. And I think that our enemies have noticed this, and they're going to be filling the void.
They will indeed. Finally, retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore spoke to ABC about how this may affect military morale. Watch this.
And many of them worked decades with multiple deployments overseas in the last 25-year war we've been in and engagements around the world. And to speak to them in that manner is somewhat disheartening. This wasn't a motivating speech. It was, if you don't like it, leave. And all of them got the option to leave. Everybody in that room, I would suspect, had over 20 years of service and could walk. They forget that this is a volunteer military that we have, and this could have rippling effects in the middle ranks in the military based on this attitude that we will now take the military and send them into U.S. cities to train, and that the number one role of the military now, if I heard it right, was Homeland Security, the deployment inside the United States as opposed to facing our adversaries on faraway lands.
Driving the point home, The Guardian reports that a broad swath of retired soldiers and veterans see Donald and Hegseth's speeches as both insulting and dangerous. For instance, the veteran activist and Common Defense Policy Director Naveed Shah said, quote, "The people in that room who have served for 20, 30 plus years in uniform do not need Pete Hegseth to tell them about warrior ethos," unquote. The Guardian also quoted former Navy cryptologist technician Tamara Stevens, who said, quote, "Basically, Hegseth is saying that we're no better than Hamas because people are joining because they want to break things and they want to kill people. I mean, for anyone that's been in the military, he's not qualified to be Secretary of Defense. He's barely qualified to be a host on Fox." Well, I think he's actually eminently qualified to be a host on Fox. He's stupid. He's sycophantic. He lies like he breathes. And he's willing to say whatever is put in front of him, as long as it's in service to the fascism represented by the Trump regime. This is indeed a dangerous time for the United States military, but I was happy to see that one of the generals mentioned the distinction between legal and illegal orders. Now, here's just hoping that after this horror we witnessed, military leaders will be instructing those under their command what the difference between those two things actually is. Now, current military officers, as I said earlier, are not allowed to go on the record, but political analyst, the awesome David Rothkopf, says that they are speaking off the record, and they're opinion of the speeches they heard the other day are scathing. Let's take a look at what Rothkopf had to say on the Daily Beast podcast.
Why are we bringing them together? We're bringing them together to hear the views of America's most famous draft dodger, Donald Trump, and this frat boy who's spent a few years in the military, but whose life subsequent to that in veterans organizations and everything else was, marred by scandal and mismanagement, who is completely unqualified. The guy who is the least qualified Secretary of Defense in our history. And they're going to lecture the career leaders of our military at this particular moment. It is not going down well. I can tell you, I've spoken to a bunch of generals and admirals and people close to them, and I can tell you, it is not going down well. This is seen as a waste of time, and it offends them at a pretty fundamental level.
Because it is offensive. Imagine having served your country voluntarily for 20, 30 years or more, and being told by a man who had 5 deferments during Vietnam that he knows better than they. It's actually difficult to put into words just how offensive that is. Here's hoping that this provides some kind of watershed moment, and that people and the upper echelons of the United States military start preparing, because we know that the Trump regime is perfectly capable of deploying active duty military to American cities because they already have. And unless somebody stands up, that's only going to get worse. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating, because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.